You know, I realize that there are only 13 movies I've ever rated a 10 out of 10. For the last 10, 15 years, I've been cataloging every single movie that I've watched and I've rated them on IMDb. Yes, I know everybody uses Letterboxd now, but IMDb was always my thing and it's just a pain to transfer it over. I want to talk about my favorites today and share a bit of love for things that aren't Marvel and Star Wars, mostly because the alternative to making this video is to talk about The Acolyte, which I don't want to get into anymore, just going downhill by the week. Starting off on the lower end of the spectrum is Marley Me. Now, I am a dog person through and through. I was raised with dogs. My mum had dogs in the house all the time, and I became very attached to them at a very early age. Even now, I've got a dog. I did have two huskies. One of them we had to give them away, but yeah, dogs have always been a massive part of my life. So when I sat down and I watched this for the first time, I was expecting this really wholesome, lovely movie. And if you've seen Marley Me, you know that the ending puts you through some shit, okay? Now, I would definitely say that Marley Me kind of lives alongside Hachiko, which is another great movie about a dog gets old. If anything, I would say that Hatchi is slightly better, but for some reason that wasn't on my list, so I'll have to review that. If there's a film about a dog and it's got some kind of hard-hitting story, the likelihood is that I'm gonna love it. There was another one recently, actually, with Channing Tatum. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's either just called Dog or really simple title, but even that it got me. There's just something about these animals, man. Next up is a weird kind of indie film that I don't feel like a lot of people have heard of. It's called I Origins. The people who have seen it tend to say that it's one of the best movies they've ever watched. It's the most enlightening. It's got so many cool concepts that it plays with. The story is well written. Don't watch the trailer, by the way. If you haven't already seen the trailer, just dive straight into the movie. It deals with a lot of themes from death and sci-fi, spirituality, all that kind of stuff. Not in like a weird preachy way, but it's just the concepts are really unique, and I haven't really seen it expressed in a way that hits as well as this film. I watched it when I was about 14, 15 years old, and the experience of that movie has stuck with me. And I know in my mind, I haven't watched it in like 10 years. Maybe I should do a rewatch, but watching that movie at that time changed me as a person. It's one of those very few defining factors when it comes to media. I think it's definitely one that you have to watch at some point. It's similar to Requiem for a Dream, where like it will hit you the hardest one time and you will never want to watch it again, but it will have a profound impact. Next on the list is Fault in Our Stars. Now, this is a great movie. It's actually the book was written by a YouTuber, John Green. I like to think of him more as a writer than somebody like me who sits around and makes silly internet videos, but the book was incredible. And then I watched the movie. I don't know if it's the timing. Like looking back on it now, I don't think I would put it on my top 10, but I guess at the time it really hit me hard, and it's one of the better rom-coms. It's a typical kind of story though, like teen gets ill, she falls in love, and then the inevitable is coming, but it's the trip along the way and the twist that happens in between that really sort of makes this movie stand out. Now, looking back at it from my perspective as somebody who's a little bit more seasoned, a little bit older, like if I compared this to The Notebook, I think I would prefer The Notebook. The fact that the book had such a profound impact, or maybe it was just the way that it was expressed at that time. Either way, great movie. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Now, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. My uncle actually played Goyle, one of Malfoy's henchmen kind of thing. So not only did that give me a couple of little bragging rights, but it's also one of those really cool experiences where like you get to watch your own family member on the screen. I don't know if you guys have any actors in the family, but it's very surreal. He also randomly came up in, I think it was like The Mandalorian. No, it was Andor. He had like a 2-second role as a background security guard while Andy Serkis was like walking down a hallway or something, and then I just had to pause. I was like, what the where did you come from? But yeah, having him in Harry Potter really kind of made the experience a little bit more special for me because I got to see my own family being part of that role. Now, I think I'm in the minority here when I say that the last few Harry Potter movies were some of the best. I think that the early ones were very young and childish, and we grew up with them. We were in that mindset of being this curious kid, and then, you start realizing that life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and you kind of go along that path with Harry and Ron and Hermione. Deathly Hallows Part 1 was like, okay, we're pretty much in adulthood now. We're finally crossing that threshold, and seeing how well it was adapted from the book meant a lot. There were a couple of things I would have liked to have seen, but for the most part, I feel like they absolutely nailed it. And this was the first Harry Potter movie I actually ever remember seeing in cinema. I don't know if I ever went to any before that, but like the ending of this movie was the same as like Infinity War. It was a massive cliffhanger. How are we going to come back from this? What's going to happen? And I think that's why it holds such a great place in my heart. I don't even know what number we're on, but A Star is Born is another one of my favorites. And this is kind of a personal thing. I don't think it's the best movie ever made, don't get me wrong, but it is the movie that my partner and I, my missus, my fiance, this was the first movie that really meant a lot to both of us. It's our movie. Shallow, one of the main songs from the movie, is our song, you know. So for that reason alone, it holds like a really special place in my heart. And it's one of the few movies that I've actually actively tried to rewatch if we're having like a little date night at home or something like that. It's really nice to revisit that with my partner, have a little catch up on the sofa, and it's cute. Now, I've never seen the original for this movie, so I could be missing a couple of elements here, but I feel like Bradley Cooper did an amazing job in the role. I think that this is one of his best performances ever. Limitless was like a very close second, but there's just something about the raw emotion that Bradley Cooper is able to bring out here and the struggle with addiction and things like that. Very personal movie for him, but very, very well done. And Lady Gaga, I think this was like her first major role outside of Black Mirror, I think she was in, and she nailed it. Honestly, like she's got some incredible songs throughout this movie, and I heard a story that like one of her friends passed away while she was in the middle of filming this, and she kind of channeled that. And if it's true, dude, you can feel it. The level of emotion that Lady Gaga is able to put into this performance is incredible. Particularly the last 20 minutes or so, it's beautifully well done. Maid is another one on my list, and again, looking back on it, I can't remember too much about the movie, but I know that, again, I think this is one of those ones that hit me particularly hard because it was when my kids were 2 or 3 years old this movie first came out. They're now 5, my oldest is 8, and this deals with some really hard themes for a parent, I think, because you have to go through that emotional experience of how am I going to provide for my kid? What happens if I can't provide? What happens if I lose my job? What happens if I'm homeless? How am I going to... You see what I mean? And it's one of those things that at that point in time, it was a prominent thing in my mind. I think episode after episode, I was just sat down crying pretty much every single time, and I was dealing with emotions, and it was like the movie was speaking to me at the time. Now, looking back on it, is it one of the best series ever? No, but it's got some really beautiful cinematography elements. It's shot very well. The acting is absolutely phenomenal. I think it's definitely worth a watch. If you're a parent, perhaps you've just had a new kid, or perhaps you're dealing with some of those mental things yourself, this movie can be very helpful. Check it out. It's kind of a hard watch at points, but it is worth watching. Next up is a fairly recent movie, and this one took me by surprise. It is The Creator. It is directed by the incredible Gareth Edwards, who is very quickly becoming one of my favorite directors of all time. His way of creating a movie and doing visual effects is so unique, and it's so, I don't want to say against Hollywood, but he makes the impossible seem possible, which is a huge task for a director, and I feel like he is one of the best at doing it. And this one is just so weird because like I'm trying to think about how I can describe it in a very eloquent way that will give you, piece the story together without spoiling everything. And it's weird because it has so many elements of things that we've seen before. We've got the Last of Us, where, dad is instructed to get this young person, this child, from one place to another, and they build a bond as they go. It's got the sci-fi elements of like Ex Machina and I, Robot, and these are all things that come into play, but it's the execution. It's just done so brilliantly. And I don't want to spoil the movie, but definitely if you're a fan of Gareth Edwards, or if you like sci-fi movies, even if you like things like Rebel Moon, Star Wars, Ex Machina, like we just spoke about, I would definitely recommend watching this movie because it's mind-blowingly good. Okay, before we get into the top 5, let's have a chat about the Avengers, okay? If you watch any of my videos, probably haven't because it's a tiny channel, but you would know that I am a huge Marvel fan. Recent years, we've had some conflicting interests. We could say it like that. But within the community, there's always a big tie-up, which is better, Infinity War or Endgame. And I don't think Endgame would have been as good or as well received as it was if it weren't for Infinity War and the cliffhanger and the big lead up to what is going to happen. With that said, Infinity War for me is second best because the execution of Endgame was so brilliant. Now, that's not to downgrade Infinity War. It's an incredible movie, great writing, etc. And seeing these characters that we've known and loved come together after 10, 11 years of getting to know them and seeing all their individual stories and their elements. And we finally see them in this huge battle that paid off so well. Like, this movie would have been so easy to screw up. If you think about it, you see what they're trying to do with Marvel at the moment, introducing a new character every single week. And it's just, we're never going to see the majority of those characters ever again because it's hard to get the budget when you look at it financially and you look at like, oh, how are we going to get this one with this one with this one? Oh shit, we're 50 million deep already? Shit, okay. But the execution for this movie was so great, and it had everything you would come to expect from a Marvel movie. It had some great comedic moments. The action was phenomenal, and I remember being in the cinema when Thanos, the opening scene, he's walking through the ship and he just takes out Hulk, sends Thor flying off into space, and then at the end of the movie, Tony is trapped, and you're like, what are we gonna do? How on earth are the Avengers gonna come back from this? And it's the last time that Marvel was so great. They've had a very rough couple of years. It's not like Star Wars where the writing is terrible every single time. That's only happened the majority of the time. But I think it's just so hard when you've had this great formula, you've had these great characters, and they're human, they're getting older. How do we keep expanding on that experience that we're trying to give the audience? I think at the time, Infinity War was peak Marvel, and it was one of the best stories we could have ever gotten. Rated above Infinity War, though, is Logan, and I don't think there is ever going to be a better superhero movie. I think this one stands out because we're so familiar with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and this movie was so unlike every single movie we had seen him in before. It wasn't a fun X-Men movie where he's going around just slashing people for the sake of it. He's old, and he's withered, and he doesn't know how to deal, even at an older age, he doesn't know how to deal with a lot of the themes that would come along with those responsibilities, how to act like a parent, how to be a carer for an older man, Charles Xavier. And then you see the deeper, darker inner conflict when Wolverine is tasked with taking down his clone and seeing how that played out with Charles Xavier. And there's just so many elements to this movie that I don't think are appreciated enough. Now, I know this movie is absolutely adored by the community, but I just feel like it deserves so much more. Daphne Keane is absolutely phenomenal in this movie. She doesn't really do too much talking, but her performance just in, physicality and facial expressions and things like that was incredible. And then seeing her a little bit older in The Acolyte, she hasn't lost her chops. I hope that she comes back for Deadpool and Wolverine, because that would be really cool to see her in that. But yeah, this swan song for Wolverine, and what was meant to be Hugh Jackman until he came back, I think it is a masterclass in writing, visual storytelling, and character development. And I think it'd be near impossible to get better than that in the future. Whiplash is a movie that, again, I experienced as a teenager, somebody who had so much drive and ambition, and I was a grind bro back then. I wanted nothing more than to be successful in some kind of artistic field. And then you watch this movie and you get the fierce, cutthroat mentality of J.K. Simmons trying to coach Miles Teller into being the very best that he can be. And it's in a way that is so authentic, and a way that you can see that the kid has so much potential, but he needs to be forced into a position where he needs to earn it. He's surrounded by these incredible people with so much raw talent. The only thing that's going to make him the best in the room is being pushed to that very limit. And again, it's one that resonates with me, but it's one of the few on this list that I watched when I was younger, and I don't want to demote, I don't want to change. It was a remarkable experience from start to finish. And I don't know the first thing about drumming. I did a bit of piano when I was younger, a little bit of guitar and things like that. Even as somebody who doesn't play that instrument, the story and the character development and things like that, again, it's a masterclass. This is why the movie's here in the top list, because you have 2 hours to build this experience and this story and this world that you want to immerse people in. Movies like Whiplash and Logan, they are so well done that within the first 30 minutes of the movie, you're in there with the characters in the room. Her is a movie that is becoming kind of a terrifying reality, to be honest, to the point where OpenAI actually got in trouble for stealing Scarlett Johansson's voice and using it as one of their voice models. Supposedly, they hired somebody who sounds very much like her. Oh man, so this movie, it has some very interesting and unique romantic elements. Guy is very lonely, he's very distressed, he's going through some stuff, bad breakup, and a computer tech AI company has developed this version of an AI that can be your companion. It can help you with work, and you realize that it's so sentient, and its ability to learn and act human helps the lead character, played by Joaquin Phoenix, by the way, who this is, again, his best role in my opinion. The AI helps him with his day-to-day tasks, but they build this deeper, more romantic bond, and there's some sexual stuff in here. There's some enticing possibilities of building a relationship with AI and building a genuine connection with something that doesn't exist, which again is both a beautiful thing and a terrifying thing. But for me, the one that really separated this from the rest of the crowd that kind of deal with sci-fi romance and things like that, it was the world that this is set in. And it's not even the main focus of the movie, but it felt like one of the best sci-fi movies that I have ever seen, one of the best worlds that I'd ever been introduced to, because everything felt so organic, everything was placed in the right way. Every second, every single frame of this movie is so beautifully created and so beautifully crafted. It felt more like I was enjoying art than a movie. It was an experience. It wasn't just a story. It sounds very cliche and hoo-ha, but I don't know, that's how I reflect on this movie. It's definitely got something very beautiful and very raw, very unique to it. Okay, so top 2, we're going to start off with Shogun. Like my top 10 is just a weird list that would fluctuate every single day. I won't be able to pick my favorite movie, but Shogun is a incredible series. I've always been a fan of Japanese culture. And that goes from the historic element to anime to art. I remember getting into Japanese culture at a very, very early age, getting into games like Dynasty Warriors and learning about Liu-Bei and realizing that a lot of these characters within the game are actually based on popular historical figures. And then as I got older, I started researching more and, I started watching more anime and trying to figure out what made it so unique and some of the artists behind it. I started spending a little bit more time learning about the creators and the artists behind some of this, the anime and the things that I'd always loved growing up. Some of the people that I looked up to, like Akira Toriyama, who was the creator of Dragon Ball Z, was like, he had such a fascinating life. He had such a beautiful outlook on characters and the way that they should be developed. And even people like Satoshi Tajiri, who created Pokemon, you realize that he had a fascination with catching bugs when he was younger. And then he turned that into what we know and love as one of the biggest franchises in the world. So now in adulthood, I've reached a point where I really want to learn more about this culture, and you have this incredible series called Shogun, and it deals with some of the most beautiful elements of Japanese culture. It has the betrayal, it has the suspense, and I'm sure parts of it are dramatized, and I think that although the characters are renamed, it does a very good job of capturing all of those elements that transpired throughout the course of the book, which I haven't read, by the way. That's on my to-read list. But in terms of story, it's beautiful. In terms of character development, it does such a great job. Even one of the main characters, John Blackthorne, who's played by a guy called Cosmo Jarvis, I think is his name. That's such a cool fucking name. Seeing how he transitions from a pirate that's stowed away on Japanese shores, although it was his intention to arrive and to use the Japanese, to really being able to develop as a character, become part of their culture, fall in love with one of the lead actresses, and seeing how he tries to learn Japanese, and towards the final few episodes, like, he really builds a connection with Toranaga, who again is one of the best characters that I have ever seen portrayed on screen. Mariko, who is played by, what's her name? Shit, I'm gonna have to look this one up. Anna Sawai. Incredible performance from start to finish. I think she's one of the best female leads that I've ever seen. Every single character, dude, they just stand out so well. And some of the comedic aspects are so unexpected in this series, but it sticks with you. I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but just this series as a whole, there isn't a single thing I could critique, even if I wanted to. I would have liked to see maybe a tiny bit more action, but I feel like everything that was in there was placed perfectly. Apparently they're working on a season 2 and 3 at the moment though, which is unexpected because I don't think the books actually extend that far. If they can do it in a way that is faithful and that builds upon everything that we already know about this world and these characters, dude, absolutely go for it. And fun fact, I have wanted to learn Japanese for a very, very long time, but I've never thought that I could. I never thought that it was a possibility, particularly as somebody who struggles with English. And watching this series actually gave me the inspiration to pursue learning Japanese, which is something I never thought I'd be able to do. And I'm about a month and a bit in now. It's very hard, it's very complicated. I'm learning the very early basic stages of Hiranaga. But if it weren't for this series, I honestly don't think I would have had the balls to kind of throw myself in head first and learn more about this culture and this language as a whole. So great job, Sanada, you inspired somebody. Then finally you have Avengers Endgame, which I think in a lot of ways doesn't really compare to some of the deeper, more emotional things on this list, like Shogun. It's completely different within its own right. It's just Avengers Endgame was one of the best cinematic experiences that I have ever had in my life, and I don't think there's going to be one that rivals it. Little moments from Captain America picking up Mjolnir, taking on Thanos, and then you have the team up of these 3 big characters, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans, and Robert Downey Jr., characters that we never thought would properly team up and we'd see this live action, like this one-to-one beautiful creation of everything we've known and loved from comic books. It felt like the best version we would ever get of something like that. The final battle was beautiful and epic and incredible, and we got all of the characters that we could have possibly wished to see on the big screen. I'm not going to spend too much time blathering on about how great X, Y, and Z was in this movie, but I will say that sitting there at a midnight release for Avengers Endgame, surrounded by hundreds of Marvel fans, crazy fans like myself, I don't think that's a cinematic experience that I'm ever going to get again. So I can't wait to see what they do with Secret Wars, but I don't think they're going to be able to come close to the experience we got with Endgame. All right, that's pretty much it. I felt this video's gone on longer than expected. I've been recording for about 45 minutes. I'll try and trim it down to about 20. I know it's a bit of a ramble, but if anybody cares what my preferences on movies are, there you go. I think we have some incredible movies coming out over the next couple of years that could kind of sway how things go, and there were some very close contenders to this list. Godzilla Minus One was an incredible movie that I think I gave that one a 9. I want to rewatch it though because I was a little bit distracted. The Last of Us, Lord of the Rings, Avatar, The Way of Water, Loki, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Like there are so many other movies that I can instantly think of that are like up there. I suppose the top 10 are just ones that I sat down and I watched, and because of the circumstance, because of where my head was at that time, those are the ones that I rated most highly. Like even now I think I should put La La Land and Lord of the Rings up in the top 10, but I don't know. It's one of those things that movies are a very personal experience, and I think that doing this like top 10, top 13, 14, whatever list, it's something that's very personal to me, and I'm not trying to encourage other people to necessarily go and watch these movies. It's just these are things that have literally defined my character over the last 29 years that I've been on this planet. Even looking back to like the first Pokemon movie like I remember being a kid and like I still look back at that one scene of Pikachu crying when he's being like slapped up by the other Pikachu. It was just, it dealt with some very, very deep themes at a young age and instilled lessons that I hold dear to this day. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Let me know if I should do like the worst movies I've ever watched. That'd be a fun video. I'm also working on another video at the moment where I kind of dive into some of the most anticipated movies over the next year. So stay tuned for that. I love your faces. You're amazing and beautiful, and I will catch you in the next one.